It was raining. Viggo stood outside of the restaurant, thinking his umbrella was soaking wet, although it was supposed to be completely rainproof. Viggo took another bite out of his sandwich and chewed it furiously. He was thinking of last night. He could barely imagine how something horrible like that could happen. Last night it was when Gunnar broke up with him. He finished his sandwich, put his umbrella down, and starting working. He didn't know what to do with himself. He was so depressed after Gunnar dumped him. What did I do wrong? Viggo thought. It all happened so fast. He was drinking some cola at his apartment when all of a sudden Gunnar showed up at the door and called him a liar and a fucking prick. Then he stormed out and left Viggo speechless in his own doorway. After that, Viggo just threw himself into bed crying. He wanted to jump off the balcony, but his body denied it, and he cried himself to sleep. Viggo decided to walk down the road that led to Gunnar's house. He wanted to try one more time and see if Gunnar really loved him or not. After 10 minutes or so, he arrived to Gunnar's house. He thought if he should turn back and walk away, but he was determined to talk with him. He walked slowly up to Gunnar's door, but when he was about to knock, he saw that the door was open. He took a deep breath and walked inside. He closed the door very quietly. He could hear something further inside the house. He was sneaking, and the further he went into Gunnar's house, the noise became louder. He could now identify the noise. It was someone moaning heavily. What is he up to now? Viggo thought to himself. The noise came from the bedroom. Viggo raised his arm and grabbed the doorknob smoothly. He just stood there for a few seconds. Then he turned the knob and swung the door open. What he saw in Gunnar's bedroom made his heart stop completely. There was Gunnar completely naked, revealing a button from their best friend, Kurt. Kurt had been their friend since high school, but Viggo never had any feelings to Kurt. But there he was, thrusting his enormous cock inside Gunnar's asshole. Viggo-san, is it that you? Gunnar half whispered and half moaned. The words came out like he had a hard time pronouncing them, and was out of breath, but it wasn't surprising at all when he remembered that Gunnar's anus was getting penetrated by Kurt's dick. When Kurt noticed Viggo in the doorway, he hurried to pull his dick out of Gunnar's anus. He grabbed some blankets off the floor and dragged them over his naked body. And dug his face in the pillow. He was ashamed for what he did. I'm sorry, Viggo-san, Kurt whispered. I didn't know. Viggo heard the words, but his mind took a while to process them. How could you do this? Viggo cried out. Was it enough to storm into my house, call me a liar to break up with me? No, you had to fuck our best friend as well. What the fuck? Viggo-san, I thought you had been cheating on me with Christo-chan, Gunnar explained. That's why I was angry, but I didn't have the guts to tell to you after I found out the truth. And this, I don't know what I was doing. This just happened, and I'm sorry. Viggo stared at Gunnar's face for a while, and then at Kurt's face. Can you leave us alone for now? Gunnar asked Kurt. Yes, of course, Kurt replied. Quickly and quietly, Kurt put his clothes on and left the house. Viggo and Gunnar were all alone. Now for a while they just stood there staring at each other. Viggo was trying to figure out what to say, but all he could do was to stare at Gunnar's body. How could he forget a body like that? He was not muscular, but very strong. His muscle was hiding under his body fat. But Viggo had always thought that was attractive. His smooth, long black hair fell smoothly over his shoulder. and his pretty face was flawless, like always. Can you forgive me? Gunnar asked. Viggo's eyes started to water. Of course I forgive you, Viggo cried. Gunnar opened his arm and Viggo hugged him. They cried, hugged and kissed. After a minute of hugging and kissing, they let each other go. So I have been receiving Kurt's stick all night. It's time I give something to myself, Viggo smiled. Gunnar started stripping Viggo of his clothes. I want to penetrate Viggo-san's asshole, said Gunnar happily. As Viggo got down on 4 feet on Gunnar's bed, Gunnar started touching himself. Are you ready? Asked Gunnar. Yes, put it in. Viggo felt the warmth from Gunnar as he thrust his cock inside Viggo's anus. The pleasure that Viggo felt made him think that he would never have to do anything good again in his life. First Gunnar moved slowly, but then he started to pound Viggo's butthole like there was no tomorrow. Viggo moaned so loudly that Gunnar put both hands on his ears. They had been fucking for 20 minutes when Gunnar finally moaned so loudly that Viggo knew that what was happening. That's it coming. I can't hold it back any longer. Just after he finished yelling, Viggo could feel the thick liquid flowing into his anus. It was so warm. Gunnar pulled his massive cock out of its butthole and his cum flowed out of it. Viggo was so happy. Viggo-san, I will always love you, Gunnar said while trying to catch his breath. I love you too, Gunnar-chan. I love you too. The end.